This morning I sent a letter to the 4 caucus leaders because if we're going to have a special session next Tuesday, we need to reach final resolution on the 3 pieces of legislation. The premium relief for Minnesotans who don't qualify for relief under the Affordable Care Act, the tax bill and the bonding bill, which are left over from the last legislative session. We have spent many hours, staff and commissioners, working with legislators in various meetings. It's been extremely difficult given that everybody has a different schedule and people are not at the Capitol, and that's understandable, but the need now is to reach an agreement on these 3 bills if we're going to include them in a special session. So we have taken the initiative, we have taken the comments that we received from numerous different legislators, some of which disagree with each other, and put those into 3 bills which represent our best summation of what the agreement should be, and we've sent those to the reviser, and I'm sending those off now to the legislative leaders, and it's really up to them now to decide if they're going to proceed and reach agreement on these bills, and we would proceed to a special session or not. I hope that they will concur with them. I think all 3 bills serve the best interests of the people of Minnesota, and if it is not possible to agree on a tax bill or a bonding bill, then I believe we should have the special session to provide the premium relief, which many legislators campaigned on over the fall, and we owe that to the people who are being hit hard by these premium increases. Glad to respond to questions.
Have you talked to them at all, or is this letter the first time you said we have to have a deal?
Well, we said last week we had to have a deal. We set the date for the special session. We talked about having agreement at the end of last week. Speaker Dowd and Senator Bacher in St. Thomas, so they're not exactly available. So, it's been very hard to coordinate, extremely difficult, and we find that legislators haven't talked to other legislators, so people are on totally different tracks, and so this is the proverbial herding cats has been the responsibility that's fallen on this office, and I had staff and commissioners and staff at Revenue and MMB spending many hours trying to come up with drafts, get different opinions, revise those drafts, cost them out, etc. And this is it. We're at a point now where either they agree to these 3 bills. No one's going to like every bit of every one of them. That's a given. I don't like every bit of every one of them. That's just to be expected. So it's a question now, do they really want to do this, and are they willing to agree, since they're all in disparate locations? We can't have a meeting to discuss this, so it's basically saying by Thursday, close the business, you need to have agreed to these bills, or we can't proceed to a special session.
Governor, did you mean St. Thomas Virgin Islands, that the legislative leaders are not here? And if you did, what does it say to you about the commitment to get this done?
Well, they had planned it's a NCSL or whatever it is. I don't know any more than the fact that that's where they are. But it's not understandable that people have made other plans to be elsewhere during at this point, because no one was anticipating we'd be still after 7 months talking about trying to get to a special session, and next week is the last time I'm available to do that. So.
Are those plans more important than the people who
you have to ask them.
Governor, some Minnesotans are wondering why it's so important to get this done in this month when the legislature will be coming back for a regular session in just a few days.
Well, the premium relief is something that many of us promised people who are being afflicted by these increases without any relief. And it was a campaign theme many legislators and candidates took last fall. So, we set the the stage for it, and we've set the table for it. Now it's time to deliver the relief that people need, and many felt they were promised. The tax bill and the bonding bill, if we don't pass it this year, then it's going to carry over the next session. Realistically, it's going to go to the end of the legislative session, as bonding bills always do. We'll lose a whole construction season. If we pass the bill right this week, next week, we'll be able to take that to issue the bonds necessary to begin those projects in the spring in the next construction season, and if not, they'll be delayed by at least a year. The tax bill, I think, has some good provisions in it. Again, some people say, well, let's wait so the next legislature can do its own tax bill. I prefer this one to what I think is likely to come from the next one, so I'm willing to do it. It's costly. The cost about $480 million for the 18-19 biennium, and as much as $700 million for the 2021 biennium. The Department of Revenue is still working out the final cost figures, but it's an expensive undertaking. But it provides some very good tax relief for middle-income families. It provides child care tax credits, which is working family credit, student aid, student assistance to those in higher education. It funds the LGA and CPA that the local governments depend upon. And it does a number of other things with conformity to the federal tax code that's going to make filing tax returns a lot easier for Minnesotans, both individuals and businesses, in this upcoming filing season. So it's got a lot of good features that will be lost, or at least deferred, if it's not passed. So in balance, I'd say that the three bills are good bills, and they are needed, and they will benefit the state. So let's do it.
Governor, am I reading this correctly, that you're now planning to take the rebate money out of Healthcare Access Fund rather than out of the reserve?
That was Speaker Dowd's strong preference, and so we'll that's what the bill contains now. We do take the $334 million out of the budgeted reserve. And put that back into the general fund. I think it's excessive. I disagreed with the decision that was made a couple of years ago, which our commissioner of MMB, then Jim Showalter, pushed hard for it, and the legislature went along. Does this by rote, by formula transfer. We have $1.6 billion without that additional money in the reserve. We have $350 million, close to $400 million in the so-called cash flow account. So we have close to $2 billion of cash reserves available. And if we encounter a recession that goes beyond that, we'll have more problems than that on our hands.
Following up on David's question, the deadline to get your insurance for next year is this week. So
To have it take effect January 1st.
right, but you have to buy it by this week. So why do you need to pass the health insurance aid next week versus 2 more weeks? Why couldn't it come up right away in the regular?
Well, if it doesn't, if we don't have a special session, I will urge that it is brought up in the very first week of the legislative session. As you know, the legislators are not inclined to do things in the first week of the session or even the first month of the session. So it would be a difference from the norm. And there are a whole lot of other ideas to change the Affordable Care Act, to change the to make MNsure, or revise all sorts of features that, if they get them into play in a regular session, is going to make it extremely difficult to pass a bill in the first part of that session. So now, you're right. I mean, by the end of this week, but if we have an agreement by Thursday, people will know that they have that, can count as much as you can count on something. But if the legislature's coming back, special session, I think the chances are very good they're committed to passing it, and that's the best we can do under these circumstances. I made a proposal October 27th that is basically the one that's remained on the table now, and various people had various ideas about it and various other ideas, but nobody came forward with anything specific. So here we are.
Governor, how how much of these proposals here have been agreed to by everyone, and how much is this your offer based on negotiations?
Well, they've been agreed to by different people, but other people are not aware that those agreements were made, which has been part of what's befuddled the whole thing for the last couple of weeks. The premium relief bill was agreed to, these are my understandings, was agreed to in the December 2nd meeting of the caucus leaders and myself, and they said at that time they wanted to add something that would provide access for people, for continuing coverage for people who are in the midst of cancer treatments or the like. Totally support that. But we haven't heard anything back from them in terms of the details. They were going to talk to the health plans. I don't know the status of that, but again, we haven't, we did a tremendous amount of due diligence with the health plans over a couple of weeks to get them to agree to the rebate proposal and their role in it. And if they haven't reached an agreement with the health plans now, it's frankly too late, unfortunately. But again, they could take that up at the beginning of the next session. The bonding bill, we've had various discussions. People have various understandings. I'm not going to put words in people's mouths. I hate it when somebody does that to me. So, but it's my understanding that the cash would come out of the bonding bill, that the earmarked highway projects would come out of the bonding bill, and that accommodation would be made for the projects that I said in a letter back in the summer were my priority items, and that those would be accommodated to honor the $999 million limit that the House Republicans put on the geo bonding, that my projects would be covered through appropriation bonds. And so that's the best composite of what we've heard, and there are different opinions about whether that should or shouldn't be. But again, we're not going to get everybody to agree on everything, so we have to decide whether we're going to do it or not. I've said before, and I continue to say, that I will not support a tax bill without a bonding bill. So those who want the tax bill need to understand, if they reject the bonding bill, then I will reject the tax bill. And that will be unfortunate because, again, I think there are many features there that I support, and in balance I support the tax bill. I don't like the stadium suite tax exemption. I think that's ridiculous. I don't like the tobacco subsidies. I think that's bad public policy. But again, I'll swallow the things that I don't like in the bills to get them done, and ask the legislators to do the same. So that, somebody will say, well, we didn't agree to this, we didn't agree to that, and individually they very likely did not. But again, with the leadership gone, I took faithfully the best composite of what the leaders had agreed to, not always explicitly but implicitly, and what we need to get these bills done.
Then at this point, Governor, with this legislative leadership, a number of times in the last year and a half or so, do you feel like this one's going to end differently?
Well, we'll just see. I couldn't say. I think the coin's flipping in the air. If there's a will, there's a way. This is a way to do it. If the willingness to do it and a true desire to provide the premium relief, we could have a special session on that subject alone. So, if people are going to be true to what they campaigned on and on all the concerns they expressed back then, which are valid concerns, then we'll have a special session next Tuesday to pass the premium relief bill. And if they want to reach agreement on the bonding or the tax bills, I think we will be well served. The people of Minnesota will be well served. But if not, they'll have to carry over to the next session, and then it'll be back in the mix with everything else.
We've seen other deadlines come and go. Is this firm this time?
Well, I don't think anybody wants to meet on Christmas Day. So, and the week between Christmas and New Year's is this is, the calendar has its own rigidity, and this is the end of the year. And we read the 20th, if they want to do it the 21st, 22nd, I'm around. I'm sure all of you relish the thought of working, right up till Christmas Eve or thereafter. But it's time to do it. It's just time to do it, or not, or decide I'm not going to do it.
Anything else on this?
And are you gonna follow the letter up with a call to St. Thomas or wherever you need to call?
I mean, the ball is really in the legislator's court. I mean, I've done everything I can do. We have done everything we can do. We have worked around the clock on this thing. Speaker Dowd said if we weren't working 24/7, I should resign. Well, I'm off the hook because my great staff and commissioners have worked literally around the clock to pull this all together. It has been extremely, extremely difficult, given everybody's different schedules and the like. You know, we've got 3 bills. We've submitted them to the reviser. They'll be ready to go on Friday. They'll meet Representative Hortman's very legitimate insistence that the bills be finalized and available for legislators to actually read them before they vote on them. And so everything's set up to move ahead. And if, you know, it's time for those who have been part of this but haven't taken that responsibility to make things happen, to show the leadership now to pull people together and say we're going to make these happen, and get the respective caucuses to agree to them, and then sign an agreement that we're going to limit the special session to those 3 items with no amendments, and then we'll have a special session. If not, they need to explain to the people of Minnesota why they weren't willing to go along. And if they aren't willing to go along in the bonding and the tax bill, then we need to have the special session anyway for the premium relief. And if they're not willing to do that, then they should explain that to the people of Minnesota as well.
Questions on other topics?
Governor, how's your budget preparations going?
Well, they've been seriously delayed by all the time and energy of, well, the time and attention of the MMB staff in particular, and revenue to a certain extent has been totally absorbed by this project, trying to get these bills reconciled with people's different opinions and costed out and everything else. So we're seriously behind.
Governor, another person threw his hat in today for your job. Are you certain you're not running again?
I'm certain I'm not running again. Running blood? I will not call you up to Itasca State Park next May on a Sunday afternoon to change my mind. Guaranteed.
That was 17-second announcement.
It's a long U-turn, isn't it?
Governor,
I'm guarantee I'm definitely not running again. There are no circumstances under which I would run again. We got some great candidates. That'll be a good successor. Anything else?
Yeah, Governor, one more shoe dropped yesterday on the stadium suites. The new policy, no more friends and family. Is that enough? The legislature is going to hold hearings still.
Well, the legislative auditor is doing his analysis, and I'd like to see his findings and recommendations. But on the face of it, based on what I've read and heard, it's big improvement, and it provided the disclosure that people wanted, and rightfully so, and they are going to pass or they discuss on Friday a very strict prohibition of anybody coming in who's family or friends. And I think that's been a very responsible way to resolve the matter. Assume the board will pass it. If there are other aspects to it that the legislative auditor comes up with, then that will be the opportunity for us to comment further.
You've had numerous instances while you're governor of things happening unexpectedly. Does this surprise you, this controversy coming up so quickly and so strongly?
Well, it begs the question, look at the whole context of comping tickets for people in significant roles. I mean, you could look at the other stadiums. The Metropolitan Sports Facilities Commission, the old one, had a suite which they could bring people in and out. So it was sort of a carryover policy and an ethic. Target Field, Target Center, the XL. I mean, what are those suites? What are their policies and practices? What about legislators being in the corporate suites of various people who have interest in legislation that's being considered and which if they haven't reimbursed for the tickets violates state law in terms of accepting a gift. So I mean, I think this is warrants a look at the entire spectrum of what's going on, and I would hope the legislative order will take that broader view, and to the extent that there are parts of it that are not consistent with my principle that if a public dollar should be expended for a public purpose, then those should be corrected.
You're very able spokesman for your office here. Mentioned a couple of weeks ago that to look at legislators and how many legislators, so that legislators should disclose if they themselves have accepted tickets, not just at this venue, but at other types of places.
I agree. I think they should. I think people need to know. First of all, again, if they haven't reimbursed for them, they're in violation of the gift ban, as I understand it. And you look at some of the corporate suites with people who have, very strong connections with the media, or people who have very strong agendas before the legislature, and the whole gift ban prohibition that was put in place 20 years ago now was just because of providing these kind of benefits to people, to legislators that were not in the public interest. So I think this demands a sweeping view of the practice, both by the public facilities as well as by other interests that are offering these benefits to legislators.
Have you been to any major events at US Bank Stadium?
I went to one Green Bay Packer football game, one Viking game against the Green Bay Packers, and I bought 6 tickets for myself, paid for them all. And that's the only game I've been to. The only time I've been there except for events, for ceremonial events.
How about when you go to Lynx games or something like that?
I buy the tickets. I sit in the seats and I buy the tickets from the Lynx, and I don't think what else. The Chief Justice taken me to the Gopher women's hockey tournament a couple years ago, and I was her guest. I didn't reimburse her for it, but I think there's not a statutory prohibition of a governor being a guest of a Chief of Justice. I went to the Gopher football game. It was 2 or 3 years ago, and bought tickets with the students. And then I went into the suite at the president's request just to say hello, and realized you stay in that suite, you never watch the game. Everybody's talking with you. So I'd rather frankly hang out with the students. And those are the only times I've been to anywhere in the last 6 years.
Did the students appreciate you hanging
Oh,
out?
they were just thrilled. They were so excited that several of them dropped their third bottle of beer right in.
I know you probably want to stay on this topic, but you mentioned the Chief Justice. Are you and her coordinating your picks for the Legislative Salary Council, and what's the process you're using now that all the deadlines have passed?
Well, good question. I mean, the statute is silent on any coordination. It says each of us will pick the 8, and 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, 1 from each congressional district. And I'll see her today at the pardon board meeting. I'd like to. I haven't approached the subject with her, but it's timely now because we have the applicants, and see whether there's any. I mean, so we don't appoint the same person, for example. We're screening out 235, I think, is the last count, applicants for the positions, and trying to doing the due diligence necessary to make sure that people qualify under the statute and and then our plan is to sit down the week after next and make final decisions. And again, whether that warrants coordination with the Chief Justice is something that I need to talk with her about. But
what is the test you're going to use to measure party affiliation beyond just the voluntary offering? Is there something you can use to make sure that people are of the party they say they are?
Well, it's a good question. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know. We don't have party registration in Minnesota, so that's not an option. Certainly, if in part of the due diligence with the people the finalists, the people will consider at the end, we will probe that question with them. We should. Some people decline to indicate a party, and we are not going to consider them because that was very explicit in the instructions. And if somebody's either an independent or undeclared, then that we're not going to pursue those candidates. But it's certainly a very, very important consideration, and I intend to follow strictly as the law requires. 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans.
Does the level of public interest in this surprise you at all?
No, I'm sort of glad, actually. I think that the fact people, are concerned about it shows the legislature was wise not to touch the issue themselves. I'm glad that there are people who want to be engaged in it, and I want people who are going to be, public service minded and recognize the commitment the legislators make, and we will take it accordingly. I'm not going to use it as a ideological football one way or another. So I'm looking for, and there are a lot of very responsible people, the people I do know who applied, and a lot of people I don't, who certainly meet those qualifications. I want good citizens.
Are you going to have face-to-face interviews with finalists?
I haven't decided. I don't know yet. I don't know.
And you're understanding that whatever this council recommends, it's binding, so if they recommend a raise, the legislature would have to come up with money to support them?
That's my understanding, but I haven't read the law carefully enough to give you a definitive response. I mean, the cost of any salary increase for 201 legislators in the scheme of a $40 billion biennial budget is not going to be significant. But if they pass, obviously they should pay for it.
Any other questions?
Governor, on the stadium suites, those public officials who attended, including some members of your cabinet and staff, reportedly reimbursed the authority for something to the tune of $170. Is that fair when an everyday Minnesota resident pays something close to that for something in the nosebleeds?
Well, I don't think they pay $170 for a nosebleed ticket. I mean, that was the figure that was the figure assigned by the stadium authority. I think $200 for a seat is. I mean, I know there's seats that are more expensive than that, although I don't think they are on the face value of the ticket. It's all the shenanigans on the personal seat license and that. I mean, if that's considered to be not a fair representation of the cost of a ticket there, then they should adjust that. But that was the figure that the stadium authority set as the appropriate reimbursement, and I give credit to those who have done so.
All good?
Mr. Condon, we will miss you.
Thanks, Governor. I'll miss his press conference.
Oh, look, yeah, all right. Nice try. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, folks. Thank you.